You're on Team Human, conscious intervention in the machine. An opportunity to emerge from isolation, liberate from individuality, surrender your loneliness, and find the others. There's a dance at daybreak where showing up means you already belong. If you're on Team Human, you already do. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and I'm on Team Human. Playing for Team Human today, community architect Radha Agrawal, co-founder of the global morning dance movement called Daybreaker, and author of the book Belong. Radha will help us break from our online-induced community confusion and learn to find true connectedness again. It's time to intervene on behalf of people. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and we're all on Team Human. Before we start, I want to thank this weird ass wonderful company called Everyone's Earth, who agreed to just sponsor us. It was weird. I met the guy at MCM here where we're shooting this thing. He's got this company that they're created this new way of making cotton that doesn't like pollute the way all other cotton manufacturers, even organic cotton. It's like the cotton may be grown organically, but when they make it, they're just pouring crap everywhere. Anyway, so I met this guy, and he saw about this show, and he's like, "Oh, well, how do you run the show?" And I go, "I don't know. We got to figure out." He goes, "Oh, well, I'll just sponsor it." And really, and then we get this. We had this negotiation. The only time I ever had a negotiation like this was with Timothy Leary back when Timothy was dying, and we needed money to just keep him in the house to pay the rent. I got the idea that he could do a book about dying publicly called Design for Dying and all. And so he said, "Really? I can't sell a book now." I said, "I'll get the book sold." He goes, "What, you'll be like my agent?" I said, "I'll sell your book." He goes, "Well, what do agents get paid?" I go, "I don't need money. I just want to keep you in the house." He goes, well, what do they get paid? A real agent, maybe 15%. And he goes, "Well, I'll give you 15%. I said, "No, I'll take 0. He goes, "No, 15. So I go, "Okay, 5. And then he goes, "All right, 10. And I was like, "Deal." So it was the first time I'd been in a negotiation where the other person was going, same thing happened here. I'm like, "Okay, it costs us this per show." And he goes, "I'll give you that." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to take this." He kept negotiating. So this is a guy who actually negotiated up from what I asked for to sponsor the show. Then that's the kind of people and company they are, this kind of, the whole circular wealth, all boats rise together that you do for me and it helps me, and then me helping you is me. It's one of those things. So thank you to Everyone's Earth for being a sponsor that just, it feels like family supporting this thing, and then me supporting it supports me, supports it, that kind of thing. Which actually, this way of being is very Belong. And plus, just having a planet, which is sort of the goal of Everyone's Earth, having a planet is kind of a prerequisite to partying together, right?
Yes.
We kind of need a place to stand and to jump up and down. But thanks so much, Radha. Thanks for what you do. I've met a few people in my life that I meet, and first I think I've fallen in love. Do you know what I mean? And it's fine. But you know what I mean? It's like, and then I realized, it's actually, it's actually bigger than that. It's like, this is like, I'm with you, and I feel reconnected to, the
We're
life
meeting again
force.
in this lifetime. How about
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I found one, right?
Once again.
Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Yes.
Yeah. So thanks. And thanks for what you do. I don't know, the place to start, I started my book Team Human with this, is the sort of the need, how we've lost each other. I don't just mean you and me, but we as humans, how we lost each other, and how whenever I just did an ecstatic dance thing for the first time in a long time, or I had a big ceremonial mushroom trip, or just sat with people, and whenever I think about how isolated I just start crying. There's like such a grief.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, dance is one of the most healing technologies that exist. And so to come home to the dancer inside of you and inside of sort of a community of dancers, that's actually the first step, I really believe. Anyway, good to be here, Doug.
Yeah, it's good to have you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you want to, you've probably told the story a lot, but I mean, I am interested in the nature, how we all lost each other and the paths toward coming back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, first of all, I still think we're consistently and continually looking for each other, right? I think because the world is moving at breakneck speed, we don't really fully. I think every day is a new challenge, right? So I'm teaching a course right now, for example, on community building and teaching 150 eager, excited community architects who want to build their own movements. And it's interesting. Every time I sort of teach this new cohort, it's kind of like, wow, I get to relearn all the new things that I get to teach all the new things that we learned in this past year because, again, even, for example, ChatGPT has been an extremely helpful tool for community building, and so it's sort of, you wouldn't think that, right?
Yeah.
But it's just been a really helpful tool for community organizing.
So what do people ask it?
So the queries, the prompts that I ask it are, what are the ways in which young people gather today? And I'm curious. I'm always curious. Like, what are the next generation doing to gather, and how are they gathering, and what are the new trends inside of social social wellness, which is kind of a term that I would say that Daybreaker and our community coined, this idea of social wellness. So coming together to move together, to dance together, to be well together, to meet each other in a space where you're also coming to nourish and nurture yourself, right? So Daybreaker really, kind of to give you a quick step back, right?
Because when I raved, it was in the late 80s, early 90s at night and on drugs.
Right, exactly. And Daybreaker is a substance-free party in the morning. So almost like the opposite, right? It is the opposite. Although we are doing nighttime parties now that are sober, which has its own in saunas. It's a whole new thing called sauna raves that are now all the rage, and we're selling out of these parties nonstop in New York, and we're launching them all over the world. But a quick step back, why I started Daybreaker was, I was 34 at the time. I was single, and I just I don't know, I just was feeling the predatory nature of going out and partying, of just like, if I wanted to let my freak flag fly at a nightclub and just like let my hips move and just devil may care, it was always an invitation for some creepy dude on drugs or who drank too much to come up and rub up against me, right? So I always had to kind of, in many ways, edit my dance moves because I wanted to be both safe but also still have fun. So Daybreaker really was kind of like, how can we create? It was a social experiment, like most artful things are. Like, I really believe that, the best art starts out as experiments, right?
Yeah.
I continue to believe that what we do today, every event is an experiment.
Every moment
is an experiment, right? So this particular social experiment was kind of, would people be willing to wake up at an ungodly hour at 6 o'clock in the morning on a weekday before going to work?
Well, you get there at 6.
Yeah,
so you got to get up at 4:30 or whatever.
It's dark outside, the dopamine rush of just like, oh my God, what am I doing? Putting glitter on your face, getting dressed up.
And these are weekday usually.
Weekday mornings. This is before the pandemic. So we've changed our model because people work from home now mostly. So it's sort of a reverse commute to have someone go somewhere and then come back home to work. But pre-pandemic, for the first 10 years of our community, people would wake up and hustle, go to the office. But before then, we would say, let's have fun and party and start our day with excitement and energy and intention and play, so that we go to the office and we're sort of lit up with creativity, with this sort of energy that we then get to infect positively to our workplace.
And how long was a Daybreaker party?
A Daybreaker event is 3 hours, but we launched it 12 years ago. But it's a 3-hour party, so it's 6 to 9 a.m. So for the first hour, we practice yoga. So it's like a stretch, kind of like get your body warmed up to then go into the dance floor. So then it's a 2-hour party, and we have all these things at the party called wow moments. So, to remind, kind of to sort of help you forget that you're sober. Because I think if you're dancing for like
Right.
after 20 minutes, you're like, all right, now what? So then we'll drop an aerialist from the sky. And then it's like, whoa, at like 6:30 a.m., there's
Right.
an aerialist dancing half naked in front of me. And then 15 minutes later, we'll have a horn section that comes out where the trombonists use their trombone lengths to make a, what do you call it? Where you dance underneath,
like a
what do you call
mambo
it?
line.
Yeah,
thing,
where you go
whatever
under.
those are.
Fuck, I forgot what it's called. But anyway, so we'll do that, or we'll have break dancers or fire spinners, all in the morning before going to work, right? So there's this like wow factor, this awe-induced state that you enter that makes you feel like you're on drugs, but you're actually sober. And so people come out of there all the time, and it's bright daylight outside, and they're like, "What the? This is like so just sort of." Confusing, right? But it's been kind of the magic that we've been trading on for 12 years. This
Right.
idea of like, the unexpectedness of where we're gonna, do a dance party. We throw parties at the Museum of Natural History in the Dinosaur Room, or top of the World Trade Center,
Right.
or inside the Smithsonian in DC, or at the Sydney Opera House, or all these wild spaces to give
so
you
it's
that
got
added
some
sense
of that
magic.
flash mob
You got
quality,
it.
or even for all their problems, the New York club kids in the 90s, they would throw a rave on a subway car. They would, other than the murderous drug-addled problems in that group, they did some surprising things.
It's a bit more ritualized. To me,
Right.
ritual is actually, I'm a geek, and I'm like a sucker for rituals, meaning that, I'm half Indian, half Japanese. I've grown up with ritual and the richness of ritual. And so I think kind of the pop-up or the flash mob, yes, the ritual of flash mob feels interesting, but it's also very pop-up-y, right? You don't, sort of, there's not the ritual of like going to church where you're reading the Bible, or you're singing a chant for your favorite football game where we met at Super Bowl, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't really watch sports, but that's sort of where
It's
we
fun, though.
met and fell in love. But yeah, I think that the ritual of gathering once a month in an iconic location with the safety of kind of an experience that it's going to be a warm up into a dance party. There's a ritual of that, and we close with with an intention reading. So we'd read a quote from your book, or we'll read a quote from some beautiful poet, so that you start off your day with, again, you leave the party with this beautiful written totem that you read out loud as a community together. And there is this church-like feeling. There is a feeling of like, this is greater than myself in a world that is so fucking selfish.
Yeah. And it's that safety really does matter. I always hated that word safe, because it was always
Me
about
too.
not saying right words
Yes.
and stuff. But this safety means the container to be dangerous. I did this thing. I finally got back to, after 20 years away from rave, I got back to ecstatic dance. I went up in Nyack. This group did this thing in a church, right? And I went with Charlotte Binns. You know her? She's this great community organizer up in Westchester. She got me to go. I'm like, oh, man. And I don't know how to dance anymore, and this and that. Or I'm worried I'm going to look all, when I dance, all like David Byrne, nerdy kind of internet guy dancing, not whatever. And went to this thing, and they started with like a cocoa ceremony, like just drinking hot chocolate, basically, but it's special hot chocolate, not drugs, but still,
it's like a heart opening.
Yeah. And line around and did these things to warm people up, and we danced. It was literally like 5 or 6 hours straight of dancing, and they were all ages, from 13, 14-year-old kids all the way up to people in their 80s, and I ended up having these relationships, like. Everyone's dancing with everybody, but then I'm like start dancing with this woman clearly in her 80s, dancing with her, and it was like we met, we had the beginning of our relationship, the whole arc of it was the whole thing. There was the torrid romance part, there was the connected, old, more mature part, then there was the realizing it's run its course, and our hands kind of separate, and it was like, no harm, no foul. We both knew it was over at the right time. And we finished. I'll never see her again, but it was a lifetime, and then another one, and then another one. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so safe on this floor. And this was the difference between 90s rave or early 90s rave, which was about, are we going to get it on or not? How high are you? How high am I? You know,
Right.
but it was like, or then, oh, they're tripping. So this is an alien I'm dancing with from another realm. And then, it was confusion. There was a safety, and it goes so deep. It's so deep enough that your heart can open rather than just kind of your brain and your balls,
Well, let me add to that for you, because I think what you're experiencing is actually the mystery, right? So I always say that the relationships, community, and sort of friendships are built and sustained at the intersection of mystery and safety. So the safety will help you want to come back for more. Safety is the ritual, right? Safety is getting the dance floor, meeting someone, connecting. But the mystery of the not knowing, of the kind of like that sort of special awe-inducing encounter, the mystery of that is what actually brings you back again and again. So if a space is just safe, right, it gets boring after a while.
Right.
So you need the mystery to keep it going. So the best communities live at the intersection of mystery and safety. The best friendships exist at the intersection of mystery and safety. The best relationship, the best sexual partnerships, the best romance exists not when it's just a safe relationship or a safe partnership, but it's actually to keep the mystery. My mom, who's Japanese, she's like, always keep a little mystery, and still to this day, she's like, your daddy still doesn't know things about me, because she's kept that mystery going, and they're celebrating their 50-year anniversary this year. Yeah,
but then that's the thing about fascism. On both sides. I don't just mean Trump.
Taking a turn.
I don't mean just Trump's fascism, but also kind of leftist authoritarian word policing and identitarianism to the extreme. Is they're both intolerant of mystery. It's like,
you got it.
Everything's on the table. Everything.
Radical truth.
Yeah, radical transparency.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want everything to be transparent. Like, keep some things to yourself. Like, don't overshare always. Like, I get wanting to know. I get the curiosity. I actually applaud and I laud curiosity. I think curiosity is the key to longevity, not peptide shots.
Right.
No offense. But I think living a life of curiosity and mystery and playfulness and dance and awe, right? That's actually longevity, the keys to longevity.
Right.
It's not shooting yourself up,
I know. And there's always a thing that people don't realize is there's always deeper. I mean, it's like I could be with a person. I want to be up in there. I want to be up in who that is. And no matter how up in there and there's always more. There's always, you can't just climb all the way through another person and out the other end.
You got it. I mean, if you close your eyes and you think of just 10 generations behind you, Doug, your mother and father 2, your grandparents 4, 8, 12, 16, 32. In 10 generations, that's 2,064 people that it took to get to you. So think about all of that mitochondrial intelligence that is inside of you.
Just my gut biome of all those people.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's like that tens of that, just in 20 generations, it's, exponential numbers, right? And so all of a sudden it gets to the pyramid, the apex of the pyramid, which is you, right? And you get to carry all of the mystery, all the magic, all the story, all the intelligence of your ancestors. And yet in this country, we live in the melting pot of Americanism, right? We also live in the now, the kind of like the nonstop scrolling of what's happening immediately without honoring our ancestry, which holds so many of the keys to the mystery that we're talking about, right? And so, when you were talking and when you were dancing with that woman on the ecstatic dance floor and you were touching her hand and you were having this moment of connection, it wasn't just you connecting with her, because you allowed yourself to allow the entire ancestral lineage of your being to actually connect with her as well. And there's science behind this too, right?
Yeah.
So
it's funny. I remember a long time ago, I went out with this woman who was definitely like the, granddaughter of like full on Nazis, whatever.
Okay.
And I'm with this, and it flashes. First, I'm thinking, what are my grandparents thinking? And then I'm thinking, the two of us are healing the trauma of all our fucking people.
I got another one for you. My daughter Soleil, she's 6. And
I met her. Oh my God. Adorable. My God.
Yeah. So the father of my child is Jewish American and I'm Japanese Indian. So her grandfather fought for the Americans as a fighter pilot in the American Army. My her great grandparents on the Japanese side fought as kamikaze, Japanese fighter
Yeah.
pilots in the Japanese army. And they were at war with each other. And just 2 generations later, they live inside of her, our daughter. And so it's just a wonderful feeling to know that peace can come through, or connection or belonging, or,
Right.
just in our lineage, we could be at war, but just in 2 generations, we're now not only in peace, but we are inside of one being. And so it's a really cool
Yeah.
thing.
It's weird because it for me it calls the notion and nature of scale into play. So what we're talking about, on the one hand, it's very organic, very immediate, and it goes in almost a natural way toward a huge scale, right? Of this race of people or nation of people and those nation, but it's the way we touch it. On the other hand, the way that most, particularly young people, are invited to engage with the world is at scale. So you're on Instagram, you're not really in a little
One-to-one.
cluster. Everything you're saying is national media.
En masse.
En masse. So how do you say, oh, I saw this thing today, and look at this baby, look at this dog I saw, look at this feeling I had, and now rather than posting it to my 1,000 best friends even, it's not, and it's on national scale. And then the merit of what I've said is sort of measured against national media, and it kind of kills
That's right.
the humanity or the belonging of it.
You
right?
got it. That's
How
right.
do you belong to a 400 million?
That's right. I mean, that's why, it's like I look at so many of kind of those that have hundreds of millions of followers, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and it's like the poverty of their one-to-one relationships is actually what we need to look at, right? So it's like, what is your net worth as it relates to one-to-one relationships? It's not one-to-many. So it's a
Right.
really, obviously, I mean, we all know this, but it's like, so often, especially today, we measure our worth through our followership, through, I mean, this is obvious stuff, but it's
Yeah.
like, when you really sit down and think about what poverty and wealth really, really are, poverty is large scale kind of, big picture without that kind of small, intimate community of relationships, right?
But most young people experience these portals are their tools for belonging.
That's right.
So how do you experience belonging on a national scale? Well, you can't, right? So Instagram, Twitter, none of these things are going to, I mean, you can maybe some of these things like Mastodon might have smaller groupings. There's ways to use them, but that's not the way the majority of people
I mean,
use
I think
these
it's
things.
really that people want to belong to a conversation. I think that when I see, because I'm, whenever I look at, sort of media's Instagram feeds, I actually mostly look at the comments because I just want to understand, just as someone who's interested in community architecture, there's like, what are the people saying? And I don't actually really care or pay attention to what's being said by the news outlet on Instagram, but I
Right.
really care about the reactions, and I really want to see what people are thumbing up or plussing up, or that's really what I kind of geek out on, because I want to understand what is the conversation that people are wanting to have and wanting to be a part of and join. And I think it's the everyday person who's lonely at home, who have no one to talk to. You talked about being a latchkey kid before we
Yeah.
we pressed record on this podcast, but it's like, did you have anyone to really talk to, or really to share your Douglas Rushkoff level ideas of just, your kind of wide, bright-eyed level of curiosity about life? Like, you didn't have that. And so I think about young people at home who have information at their fingertips. They're very intelligent. Young people are smarter and smarter. My daughter, who's 6, I just feel like she's 100 times smarter than I am. And yet they don't have access to conversations or access to, be in these sort of spaces other than through social media. And
Right.
so I feel like, it's not even so much the kind of what I'm putting out. Yes, there's that, but it's almost like I want to have as big of a following so that my comments matter, so that my
Right.
shares matter. And I think that's really what, when I looked underneath what is sort of the subconscious level of why someone wants to have followers, it's just because they want more people to hear them,
Which is
And
a beautiful
yeah,
thing.
that's it.
I mean, you want, unfortunately, it's getting 100,000 people to hear you isn't as good as getting 10 people to hear you.
100%.
But-
No, for sure. But I think that's the
yeah.
subconscious. I think that's the ultimate net
Right.
reason.
We don't want,
See me, look at me, understand me, know me.
right.
Right?
We don't want
That's it.
eyeball hours. We want genuine attention.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But even at the top level, I look at, the Trumps of the world and I'm just like, man, he didn't have anyone to talk to. So now he has Twitter to talk to. He has, and he still continues to just have yes people around him. And so it's just like,
Right.
I just feel like, no, I don't know.
He
I
still
just
probably feels unseen and
unseen and
unheard.
unheard. Yeah. And so there's a part of me that's just like, they're there, I want to just hold him and they're him, because I think that there wasn't much of that and there continues to not be much of that holding. And,
Yeah.
so I just feel like all of these people, and this is why I'm so deeply stuck on this topic of belonging, especially the moment a child is born, when they come out of mother's womb, right? You're in perfect belonging for 9 months, 10 months, you're in your mother's womb. Then you come out into the world and you're under these bright lights and doctors poking at
I
you.
know, that
and you go
sucked.
from ultimate belonging to ultimate separation, ripped away from your mother. And then you expect us to sort of kind of be normal after that, rather than, sort of give babies, give newborns the ability to really feel that sense of belonging.
I know, and they
leave.
wash the schmutz off right
Exactly.
away. At least let me
Let
keep
me
my
keep the
schmutz.
Give me the schmutz. Yeah, So I think about that a lot, of just like the trajectory of a cell's life, right? Into becoming, into leaving the womb, into all the different inputs of a baby's life, into a toddler's life, into a child's life, and so on and so forth. What are all the inputs around their sense of belonging, and how can we actually really care about those inputs? And that's really what I spend a lot of my time thinking about.
Why are consumers raving, environmentalists celebrating, and dermatologists recommending a dryer sheet? Because Kobe cracked the code. The first all-cotton, 100% biodegradable dryer sheet. Spelled C-O-B-I. C-O for cotton and B-I for biodegradable. Kobe delivers cloud-soft laundry that's static-free and safe for everyone's skin. The only dryer sheet that disappears after use with no toxic legacy in our landfills. Save 10% on your first order at KobeDryerSheets.com. C-O-B-I dryersheets.com.
And you have a whole institute nonprofit thing. This Belong thing.
Center.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't understand that so much. Daybreak, I can understand.
Daybreaker. Yeah,
Daybreaker, because
Yeah.
you can go and dance.
Yeah, you break the day. It's a dance party.
Yeah.
And ultimately, one thing I'll say about Daybreaker, it's like our ultimate mission and raison d'etre is to bring back our playful effervescence in a time of day when we're meant to be awake and alive, which is in the daytime with the sun.
I know. I remember.
Circadian rhythm tells us to go to
Yeah.
bed when the sun
It's
goes
so funny.
down.
I had this talk. I went to South Africa right before they had their elections to interview jazz musicians
Yes.
in various level of
Beautiful.
exile. And I ended up speaking with what we called Dollar Brand, Abdullah Ibrahim, this great jazz pianist who had turned from a New York nightclub jazz person to he got, Islam, Muslim, the whole thing. And he was saying, the problem with it is that we're playing music at the wrong time of day.
You got it.
So we become drug addicts.
That's
because
right.
We to play a jazz set at 11 or 12 at night, he said, is wrong, spiritually,
You got it.
soulfully wrong.
Yep, you got it. That's it. It's like, and again, instruments, music, the heartbeat, all of this, we are just but creations of the earth, right? Mother Earth. And she's told us, hey, this is the time to be awake. This is the time to rest and recover and recuperate, rejuvenate. And yet we're hopping ourselves up on caffeine, drugs, alcohol to stay awake, because the Industrial Revolution has pushed us to work in the daytime hours, so that the only time for us to revel in life and celebration is in the time of day where we should be recovering. So it's just like, there's so many, again, inputs that have pushed us to actually celebrate and connect and be in relationship with each other in times of day that they're not actually nourishing us.
So it's like 8, 9 o'clock at night. Your body wants to just cuddle up with somebody,
right.
but you got to go out. So let's do some lines.
Yes, you got it. And then and then we wonder why we don't live to 100 or whatever.
Or
and
why we have such a bad time when we're there. Right.
Yeah. And then I see all these longevity people. It's like, now they're doing the red light therapy on their face they're spending 50 hours a week on their longevity plan instead of living. So I look at all of that as well. It's just like, is that really living? Also. So it's like to really live, is not just to try to stay alive and to not die, but it's really actually to understand the circadian rhythm of the sun, of our bodies, to know when we're supposed to be awake, when we're supposed to be asleep, when we're supposed to be in relationship with each other, when we're supposed to be in contemplation, when we're supposed to be in, rest and recover.
So they're like indigenous cultures that dance during the day?
Of course. I mean, I would say that
because in the movies they always make it, it's at night and there's fire
there's a full moon dances, there's a new moon dances, there's all kinds of course, like lunar. They follow the indigenous community. I was just in the Amazon with the most incredible indigenous community over New Year's last year, sitting my first ayahuasca ceremony with the great Lynn Twist.
Oh wow!
Who just turned 80. I was at her birthday party. You're gonna love this.
I haven't seen her in 40 years.
Oh my God. So last week she invited me and 8 of her best friends who are all in their 70s and 80s, and me. So I was youngest by about 40 years to join her in Cabo for her 80th birthday. So I just came back a few days ago and I got to spend 6 glorious days with the equivalent of 400 years of intelligentsia, of lived life with these 7 incredible women. And all of them have sat ayahuasca. All of them have been to the indigenous kind of rainforest. They've lived. They believe in UAPs. They really believe.
But Lynn Twist is such an interesting person because she could have so easily been a casualty of the 70s, right? She took the EST training with Werner Erhard.
You got it.
This is before Landmark. And EST was kind of a cult. It sort of took neurolinguistic programming and Bandler and those things, just like Tony Robbins and Absolute Power, and made these weekend things. And Lynn Twist, she takes this thing, and it's a 2-weekend seminar in the original New Age tradition where they said, think it and be it. In other words, that your biggest problem is not the way the world is, it's the way you understand the world. And you get that, once you get it, as it were, then your experience of life is your choice from then on. And it was like it helped some people, but in a kind of bullshit 70s way. And she takes that insight and she goes, well, if that's true, then isn't world hunger a state of mind? Isn't world hunger an assumption that we don't need?
The real story, because I just got the story a few days ago, is that Werner Erhard, actually with Buckminster Fuller, they together came up with the Hunger Project. So
I thought she was the one who figured it out.
No. So they are the ones who said, let us use our influence with EST all around the world to end world hunger.
Right.
So in fact, it was Werner Erhard.
So he had a good spell.
Who actually built the entire ecosystem and founded the Hunger Project with Buckminster Fuller and a few others. But he used his influence. And Lynn, who was one of the biggest EST recruiters. Basically, she went and told, she brought the most people to actually take the EST training. Werner said, hey, come and work for the Hunger Project. And she started crying and she was like, oh, this is my life calling. So then Lynn was responsible for growing the volunteer network for the Hunger Project, which she grew to hundreds of thousands of people around the world without internet. So using letters and fax machines and the telephone. And so she has, I can talk about this for hours and hours. And I talked to her about this because, we're building this volunteer community for Belong Center, my nonprofit, where our mission is to end loneliness. And, where her mission was to end hunger, which was the moment, its moment back in the 60s, 70s with Werner. This moment in 2025 and beyond is, of course, our biggest pandemic is loneliness. So I've been in this deep research for how can we build the biggest volunteer network on the planet to actually change the dream of the modern world, moving from a culture of toxic individualism to a culture of true belonging for both people and the planet. And that's really my ultimate mission is that. And so I'm really trying to understand how she did that without the internet, without AI, she did that. So it's like, to me, the human powered volunteerism, that's really what I'm actually beginning to see. We have thousands of people who've emailed me from these 2 articles that were written by us from the New York Magazine and Wall Street Journal. Just from these 2 articles, we've had thousands of people raise their hand and email belongcenter.org to volunteer and be a part of this movement to end loneliness.
And it's interesting because I've kind of come full circle on that. So I started out, in college, I was a theater person and doing eventually some psychedelics and all, and really decided, and then went with the early internet and Gaia and rave and all that this was the path to kind of solving the world's problems and all. Then, as I hit my 30s and 40s, it's like, oh, I've got to learn about, philosophy and systemic change and capitalism, and I get my PhD and Occupy Wall Street. And then I'm going to figure out, how can we do the systemic structural changes that are required? Is it socialism, anarcho-syndicalism, or distributism, subsidiarity? And I learn my stuff, and I come all the way back around to it's like those sort of scaled structural, ideational, intellectual models are nice and good, but the only way I've seen any effect is back on the ground, one-to-one, person-to-person.
And actually, volunteerism is at an all-time low in America. So here's a crazy stat for you. Only 10 to 15% of Americans volunteer even 1 hour. So 85 to 90% of Americans don't even volunteer 1 hour every year because it's so hard to figure out where to volunteer. There's so much litigation around. If something happens, I'll sue you, whatever. So people are just so terrified of volunteering. So we have built an entire ecosystem that we're, again, launching now the next week for how to volunteer easily through this first of its kind National Social Connection Corps, which is like the Peace Corps for social connection that we're launching this weekend at South by Southwest. And I'm just really excited to share that because, from the top down right now, we can't really trust our leadership to really have the best intentions for its citizens. And so the only way forward, and to your point, it's like, we can try to change the systems. We can try to be like, let me from the ground, just let me just systemically think about all of these different ways. But ultimately, if people feel like they're a part of something, if people participate in a movement for connection when they themselves feel lonely, which is literally 1 in 3 Americans, and now actually 1 in 2 post-pandemic, feel lonely and have 0 friends to confide in. And this number has tripled in the last 30 years, right? And obviously we know that having poor social connections is as harmful as being an alcoholic, or twice as harmful as obesity or smoking 15 cigarettes per day.
Losing your job even has the same physical impact
breaking
as
a
losing
bone.
a leg.
Breaking a bone is the same feeling as loneliness, being left out of, like, let's say all your friends are throwing a party and you are not invited. The feeling of being left out is as painful as having a broken bone.
Right. And that's it's not just an effect of social media, it's the reason for social media.
That's right.
That's to make someone else feel left out.
No, well, that's with FOMO, right?
Yeah.
In my book, I call it FOBLO, fear of being left out.
But that's our sense of belonging has been replaced by our sense of superiority to those who have FOMO.
Yes, but again, a worse, a more subversive, a more painful FOMO, because fear of missing out means that you were invited to something but you couldn't make it, but you still wanted to go there. But FOBLO, fear of being left out, is actually even more painful because you weren't even invited in the first place.
Right.
So the fear of being left out makes you show up to things even when your body's exhausted, makes you take the drugs, makes you take the alcohol, makes you drink things when you don't want to drink them because you don't want to be left out. right? So missing out is actually you were invited
Yeah.
or you could have gone, but you didn't. You could have gone to the festival and bought a ticket, but you didn't buy a ticket.
But the blow people, people who are blown off,
Exactly.
but then the blower offers spend the party taking pictures of themselves just to make those who were blown off know that they weren't included.
So the real play here is JOMO, right? Joy of missing out, right? And it's like that's actually like the joy of missing out, meaning if you were left out, to just take a deep breath and say, I wonder why this person didn't feel connected with me enough to invite me. Well, maybe I need to reconnect with them because clearly it matters to me that I wasn't invited. So let me call them, invite them for lunch and just say, hey, I wasn't invited to your thing. I want to say that it hurt me. And that clearly means that I feel something for you, that I care about you, that I wanted to be, versus saying like, fuck them, and like, I hate them, and they didn't invite me, I was left out. That clearly there's a feeling of care there that made you want to be invited. So perhaps the opportunity is for you to check in and say, hey, I was invited to this thing. I thought I would be. I thought we were close enough, but tell me how I can, be more close because you really matter to me. That's one way to really kind of rebuild that connection with that person with whom you felt left out. Or another way is to just sort of be in the joy of being left out and just say joy of missing out and saying, you know what, I wasn't invited to this thing. Let me actually build my own moment for myself. Let me take a bath. Let me go to get a massage. Let me have a moment with me. Let me find the joy of being alone, right? Which is the difference between lonely. Alone is all one. If you look at sort of alone, all one. You're all one with nature. You're all one with spirit. You're all one with yourself. So aloneness is actually a beautiful space to be.
I don't need input right now.
Yeah, being all one. I'm just all here, right? So so aloneness to loneliness, there is a different energy, but also the JOMO of being left out. The prescription for that I always share is to really find the moment for yourself and just allow this moment to be a gift. And the gift is, okay, could I call my mom or dad? Could I call a friend who lives far away? Could I take a bath? Could I read a book? Could I journal?
Can I meditate? I always complain I never have time to sit.
You got it. So if you're left out of something and it was painful, just say, you know what? I wasn't that close to them in the first place. They didn't want to invite me. Cool. Let me just take a moment to either check in with them, rebuild that connection, or take a moment for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the belonging is so virtual now. I mean, I watch my daughter's friends. They have these, WhatsApp groups and basically and messaging groups.
Yeah.
That then they'll create subgroups and subgroups.
Yep.
But it's because, and I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to get away from the generic. Like what you were saying, if you look at conversations on X or Twitter, you don't care about what the main person said. And it's not even the comment, but the
sub
comment that creates
exactly
a little
dialogue.
Commentary. And it's like, those folks are actually having a good time in this teeny little group.
That's right. And it's dialogue, right? It's not a one way. And that's really, again, the big distinction between friendship and a one-way transmission, a speaker and a friendship, right? Someone who's speaking on social media or someone who's on stage, it's a one-way non-participatory transmission.
Right. They call it parasocial or whatever.
Exactly. Right. You got it. And so it's like when someone walks off the stage, this is why so many friends of mine who are performers or speakers, they feel empty after a tour. They feel empty after a speaker series because there's sort of a lack of dialogue. And so you go there, you speak, you talk, you get lauded, you get praised. And then you go home and you're like, well, I guess I'm alone again. Or, I have no one with whom to talk to, And so I was watching Lady Gaga's documentary recently, and she speaks of that. She goes on stages, but she then goes home alone. And there's a loneliness to that of like having all of these fans, but no one with whom to really talk to and confide in, or to ask to feed your cat, as Esther Perel so brilliantly says.
I'll talk to Lady Gaga.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I just think that there's an opportunity here to really redefine wealth in our relationships and redefine wealth in general. And actually, one of the things that I wrote about in my journal, I'm happy to share here with you, after spending a week with the 80-year-old ladies, my new BFFs, is that poverty is speed and wealth is slow. So a quick anecdote to share. So we were doing this sort of a share for Lynn's 80th birthday, where each woman prepared a poem for Lynn, or a song, or a letter of love for their 50 years of friendship. And at the end of this beautiful song that they would sing, you could tell they spent, days preparing for it, or they practiced it. At the end of the song, it might have been a 5-minute, pretty long song. The song would stop and end. Everybody would clap. And then the woman who shared the song would say, "You know what, Lynn? I spent so much time in the song. May I share it again?" And old me, or like, I guess current me, I looked at my twin sister who came for 24 hours and we were like, again? like there's more people to share here, and anytime someone shares something in a room, you just want to go to the next, new dopamine. But then everyone was like, yeah, share it again. And there was this moment where it was just like, so she sang the 5-minute song again, and it was equally as exciting the second time, at least we pretended it to be. And again, for me, the moment that I walked away with, and then each person went around, did their poem twice and their share twice, and nobody was feeling like, eye rolly, or no one was feeling like, get on with it. It was the sense of slowness, the sense of like nurturing the friendship, the sense of honoring of that person who was not only receiving but sharing, that I was so moved by. That we live in such a speed, fast, go, 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 next, 24-hour news cycle society, that we have forgotten that actually the wealth of friendship is in the slowness, is in the repetition, is in the taking the moment to receive, and that poverty is the speed, the fast, the nonstop, the going, the next, the right.
Yeah.
And so I'm really walking away with like, I want to have this conversation twice with you, Doug.
Yeah.
I want to slow the fuck down. I want to hear a song twice. I want to hear a letter that someone writes to me twice. I want to, watch an Instagram that moves me, twice.
It's so funny, because on the Teletubbies, it was this kids show. I knew the woman who started it. It was, they dance around in this little world they live in, and they had little televisions in their bellies, and they would all gather around, and they would play a video, like of a kid growing a flower or whatever, and they would always go, they'd watch the video, and then they go, again, and they play it a second time. And it was just like, they play this 5-minute video for 2-year-olds twice. And I'm like, how could you get away with that? And she goes, well, actually, we know, neurologically, we know that they watch it once and they listen to it once, because at that age, whatever. But then, so there was that happening. I remember Parker Posey, the actress, she's always had this idea. She wants to have a television channel called Slow TV. Just everything's slow. And it's just like people walking, just where nothing. Or I think about David Lynch's, that last season he did of Twin Peaks. He had a scene, it was a 5-minute scene, nothing, a guy's sweeping the floor of a bar.
Exactly.
And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Is there something happening? And it was like, oh, I get it. He's just like, just stop and watch this guy sweep the floor. Just stop your brain. I need you to shut the fuck up.
Exactly. It's so funny. Literally yesterday, my 6-year-old and I wrote a poem together that was called Stop Again. So it was like, because she says everything is like, stop, I want to do it again, stop. So we wrote a poem called Stop Again. So it's stop again, stop again, stop again, stop. If you want to go again, stop saying stop. And it was just like this, like, Soleil, this one's for you. But just this idea of just like, children always say stop and they always say again. And there's this beautiful idea of just like doing it again and stop time, like taking a moment to stop time and just doing it again.
Yeah. And that brings you to the awe. I mean, it's like the kid, I keep thinking when you said that, that my daughter, when she was little, you take the food off the little tray on her high chair, just drop it.
Yeah.
And then you do it again.
Yeah, and then do it again. Yes. And then she's like, stop, mommy, I want to do it again.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like, stop. And it's just like, stop again, stop again, stop again. It was just like, so we wrote a poem together yesterday.
So meditative, and but it's also because they're experiencing what you're saying, the awe.
You got
that moment of awe, being connected to something greater than yourself, of the awe of your ancestry.
And give me a second to receive the awe. Give me a second to hold on to the awe. Give me a moment to just integrate the awe.
I know.
That's it.
You're on
versus
your tour of the Grand Canyon and you're looking at the thing and they're like, okay, we're going to the next thing.
Take a moment.
we're staring at the Grand Canyon here.
Right. One of my board members on my nonprofit Belong Center, his name is James Pawelski. He is a professor and he should be on this podcast, I'm sure. But he built the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program with Dr. Martin Seligman, who's sort of the father of positive psychology, who kind of like basically took the concept of like, psychology in general was really focused on schizophrenia, the negative aspects of psychology. But then he said, actually, there's a positive psychology field that we should study of just what happens when we are more optimistic, when we study joy, when we're happy, when we're dancing. So he built this entire kind of field called positive psychology. So he and James Pawelski built this entire Masters of Applied Positive Psychology program at UPenn, which he's been teaching James for 25 years, and we've become good friends. And he has a whole program right now that he's working with the Whitney Museum and all the big museums of the world, the Vatican Museum he's working with, on essentially slow looking. He calls it slow looking. And this idea of when you go to the museum, you look at a painting and you just stop and you look at it slowly. And it's just this idea of like looking at the foreground elements of the painting, looking at the midground elements of the painting, looking at the background elements of the painting, and really staying in wonder and awe of what is happening when you slow look versus just like glance, like a culture of glancing.
Consumption.
Yeah, glancing, he calls it.
Well, you glance in order to
consume.
Dismiss.
Yeah.
It's like with a magazine I don't like, say. I never really liked Vanity Fair as a magazine. Back in the magazine era.
It's the cut.
I would flip through it to say, is there anything I need to see? I would turn the pages in order to dismiss them. But I remember as a kid, I used to get I won't even be erudite and say I used to get Harper's and keep it for a month. I would get a copy of Boy's Life when I was a little kid. They used to send it to Boy Scouts. It was just and you get it once a month. But I would sit with that magazine and stare and read an article 3 or 4 times, how to make a knot or how to do the thing. And it was or my Mad magazine.
That's
how
right.
many times did I look at each Spy versus Spy in there?
That's right.
Because partly the lack of money, so the lack of supply meant I only had my 1 or 2 magazines for a month, so I would keep them forever. Or the one stolen Playboy magazine I had from my dad, which lasted me a year. The joy of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, to me, the equivalent of today is like the Swifties, like the Taylor Swift fans. Or I mean, for me too, if I love a song, like I love Andy Grammer, for example. I don't know if you know Andy Grammer, but I'll listen to his songs over and over and over again until I memorize them. So you go to a Taylor Swift concert, you go to an Andy Grammer concert, and everyone knows every lyric to every single song, and it's the equivalent of the knots. It's the equivalent of your boy's magazine, because you connect with something. It touches a part of you that makes you feel like you belong, right? Like tying the knot, being part of this boys' community, to be one of the kids that knew how to tie the best knot made you feel like the cool kid, right? Perhaps. Similarly, when you know the lyrics to a song and you get to belt them out and all your friends are like looking at you as you sing the song, there's a sense of like, I am her, or I am the singer.
But there's also the opposite moments though, which are equally connecting. Like, I was reading a Samuel Beckett novel. This was when I was in college and probably high, but reading Samuel, and I got through this section and I so understood what he meant that I felt like I was the only person in the universe who understood what Samuel Beckett meant when he did that. And he was, wasn't dead yet, but I was like,
I feel seen. I feel like I get him.
And he got me,
right,
and I got him.
Yeah, there's a subconscious, subliminal message inside of
which
it.
is another kind of belonging. It's an exclusive belonging.
That's right.
But it's still connecting and real.
And actually, to bring up that point, I think it's so important, because I think there's a consistent sort of question around how can you create belonging when, in order to belong, you want to align with people who are values aligned or interest aligned, which means there is going to be some exclusion happening. So how can you belong when there's exclusivity? And to me, what I always say is like, exclusivity is kind of leaving someone out, right? But when you look at sort of boundaries, or you think about constraints, that's from the inside out, not from the outside in. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So like, for example, I talk about community building through the lens of constraints. So a community can be built through constraints, meaning Daybreaker, we're a morning dance party.
Right.
So the constraint is the morning. Whereas if you're a night person, you might not be interested in dancing in the morning. Or Daybreaker is sober. So if you're an alkie or whatever, the constraint of it being sober might not be a place where you feel like you will belong. Or our constraint is that we play disco house dance, sort of like happy house music. If you're into minimal tech house or rap or trance or whatever, it might not be the right place for you. So the constraints of actually creating kind of these values, these constraints, these boundaries for your community is a way for your community members to say, this is a community I want to belong to or not. So that is sort of from the inside out. The values of the community will help someone feel like, oh, this is somewhere where I feel connected or not. It's when someone's like, no, you can't come in because you don't look a certain way,
Right.
or you don't have enough money, or you don't have the status. That to me is where it becomes a little bit more exclusionary. Right.
Well, and the money thing is real too, though. I love what we're talking about from the perspective of putting the social back into socialism, right? The ism is the part I don't care about. It's the social.
You got it.
But how elitist is it ultimately? In other words, is this path for people who are already okay financially, already have work? I mean, how do the destitute participate and belong?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I'm a product of the American dream, as an example, right? I came to America with $0, and my father's from India, mother's from Japan. I was a student. I got here on a scholarship, a soccer scholarship, to Cornell. I played soccer.
Oh my God.
And that's how I got to America. And I worked my ass off, and I didn't have any contacts. I had no relationships, but I just sort of, I really believe that what hopefully it will still make this country great again. I mean, I don't know. I actually genuinely don't know, with all the deportations and all the immigration laws coming in. I'm an immigrant. I came, and I made my wealth here in America. I built my companies. I built my family. I built my community. I built my everything here, on the backs of hard work and curiosity and inventiveness. And so when I think of destitute, I think of destitute from a place of not having the support system to help you become more curious about life. And I think that's really the difference between someone coming out of poverty like me. Like I came from, nothing. And, my parents are well educated and of course, like they gave me a great education.
You didn't start in the projects.
No, I didn't.
You landed at Cornell, which is a good starting spot.
Of course,
Yeah.
but I applied.
Yeah.
I got in from a soccer scholarship
Yeah.
from practicing every day, 4 hours in the
Right.
soccer fields, every day. And parents who worked with me every day
Yeah.
on my SATs and,
Yeah.
really took care of that. So I really had caring parents. So in that sense, I really
helped.
belonged.
Yeah.
We didn't have money, but we had a lot of care and a lot of support. But I think that's really what the future of belonging needs is support systems to get people right into opportunities from a place of curiosity. Like I think that's really the building blocks of belonging is curiosity.
Yeah.
That I feel like is from that place you can belong to. You can begin sort of building yourself up into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a much more complex topic.
It's
it's
difficult.
a very, very complex topic.
I think about, the hardest thing for me about the Occupy movement, in the encampment was not dealing with the drummers or dealing with the press. It was there was also a perimeter of homeless people who just wanted the food.
I was here. Yeah, I was here. Yeah.
Wanted the food, and Daybreaker costs money to go to, but is there a scholarship as well?
Of course. Yeah, of course. And I in many ways, that's why we started Belong Center too. Anyone who wants a scholarship to Daybreaker, they can absolutely apply for a scholarship ticket. Or we have a volunteer trade where if you can't afford a ticket, come and actually help us set up for the event. And then you get a ticket as a trade. Like we actually don't believe in handouts. I really like to say, hey, if you want to come, but come and participate and help out. And I think that actually gives dignity to everybody involved.
Right.
As
And in
well.
some ways it's more meaningful.
It's
if
more
someone
meaningful.
giving some cash, you're actually working.
You got
Right.
it. Yeah. And so, so I believe in that as well. But one of the reasons I started Belong Center was because we wanted to create spaces. We have Belong Circles now in all 50 states. But these are free opportunities for you to come to, or donation based if you can. But basically you get into a circle. It's a 75-minute circle, and you get to really speak to your loneliness, your community, your community dreams, like what you want to,
Right.
where you are in your life if you're moving through transition. So most of our loneliness comes from moments of transition, when you're going through a divorce, when you're moving to a new city, when you lost your job, when you have a child, when you move away from home for the first time. Like the transitional moments in your life are the moments when you feel the most lonely.
Right. And those are the moments that
when we
cults
need the
jump
most.
in to
You
get
got it.
people.
Cult, religion, everyone
Yeah.
comes in to help. Drug addicts,
Yeah,
whatever.
even the online ads know how to target you at that point.
Exactly, you got it. And so that's actually the moment where people need the most support. And it's a transition when someone loses everything, when someone goes into, moments of despair. Like that's the moment where, this is why we're launching the Social Connection Core. We really believe that, and we basically call them rascals. And actually, I think you're a rascal, I'm a rascal, but RASCAL is an acronym for Random Acts of Social Connection and Love. And so we really want to rebuild the fabric of social connectedness in this country through random acts of social connection and love. So it's not just people that you know, but it's like, how can we actually buy coffee for the person in line behind us, just as a random act of social connection?
Right.
Or how can we
We
actually
used to do that in tolls, but now it's all electric. So you can't do it.
okay, right. You got it. In tools, I love that. Or like, we have 20 different rascals. We're launching an app, the Social Connection Core app, through Belong Center. But it's an app where you can actually download all these different rascals that you can do on this app with your friends, with your family, with your community, with your kids, with your school. So that, again, from the ground up, we're rebuilding this fabric of social connection, so we can actually say, hey, when your neighbor is in the projects or needs support, we're not just walking by them, but we recognize that their suffering is my suffering. And I'm Buddhist Hindu.
Yeah.
In our culture, it's like the whole Sangha needs to thrive. If one person in the Sangha is suffering, the whole Sangha, the whole community
Right.
suffers.
And that's how you get to the kind of socialism that I've been asking for, which actually is systemically significant. So once you do regard other people as your neighbors, as your friends, once you get out of the individualism
But
thing.
we can't hide behind the systemic, actually, Doug. We
I
have
know.
we have to say, hey, and this is funny, but the wealthier you are, the stingier you are. The wealthier you are, the less generous you are.
And the less likely you are to ask someone else for a favor too. But the whole point, the thing, I've been doing this talk called Borrow a Drill. The idea is to go and ask your neighbor for a tool rather than buying a new one.
So the real challenge is
asking.
My two favorite words I always say is, can you? Can you help me? Can you help me put the luggage above the compartment in the airplane?
But once
can you?
Right. But you've got the beauty of even of Daybreaker or a Belong Institute and all is helping retrain people, reorient people to the social connection, because the more social we are, and as Marx understood, social is not just partying. Social is our actual providing for each other, the less dependent we are on the corporate systems and the government and all these things to provide for us. And then we do create social change. We do create economic change in that way.
And it's not. I really believe that it's actually, to your point, social. It has to be social. And I think so many of the solutions that I'm seeing in this space are not culturally relevant. They're more pathologizing our loneliness. So for example, like the 4 projects that we're working on at Belong Center, we're doing a block party challenge. So we're inviting American citizens to raise their hand and throw a block party in their streets, because the block parties are dying. But it's only $50 to get a block party permit from the city.
Right.
But people don't know that. They only want to do one level of research to understand how to do this. So we're launching the 1,000 block party challenge to invite America to get back to block party and get to know your neighbor.
Uh-huh.
We have the Social Connection Core, which is the Peace Corps for social connection. And we have the Stop By Challenge that we're launching as well, which is like, right now, for me to go to your house, I have to, for me to come on this podcast, you texted me again, scheduling the day of, I'm coming, I'm on my way. If I'm going to see you for coffee right now, tomorrow, I text you tomorrow morning, like, are we still on? An hour before, I'm on my way. The 5 minutes before, I'm right here. Oh, you canceled? Okay, got it. but it's like we have to do 3 different check-ins, right, before we gather today. This is the kind of the culture we've built. But the culture that we want to rebuild is a culture of just stopping by. My door's open. I'm home from Monday to Wednesday after 3 o'clock. My kid's home from school. Stop by. I'm home. We're making Rice Krispies treats. Come over.
I know. It's like I gotta
Stop by.
text you. I gotta text you just
10 times.
to call you. I gotta text you.
Exactly. Schedule a call.
What
right?
happens if I just call the person?
Exactly. And just call them. And then I'm like, and I will say, like, even now, I have to retrain myself. Like, I have a buddy that calls me all the time. And there's moments where I roll my eyes. I'm like, again? He's calling me again. I have so much going on. I'm like, I'm a busy. Doesn't he respect my schedule? I'm so busy. But then I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna pick up. So I pick up, and it's just like he's playing the piano. He's like reading a book. He's like reciting me a poem. He's like, and then I laugh at myself. Like, here I am rushing through to work on Belong Center and Daybreaker, and I'm annoyed with a friend wanting to call me to just shoot the shit for 5 minutes and just have a moment to just be with me.
Yeah.
And so I've actually made it a point now when he calls particularly, or just when a friend calls, to not be like, I'll call him later, to just look at them and honor the courage that it took for them to pick up their phone, not to text me, but to call me and just say, hey, I can't talk right now. I'm in a meeting, but let me call you at the end of the day. But fuck, thanks for calling. That means a lot to me. I love you. You mean a lot to me. And then another thing I've been doing recently, Doug, is I do 10 rapid fire gratitudes. I didn't do it on this. I should have started with this podcast with it. But it's like, I'm grateful for you for doing this podcast. I'm grateful for your brain. I'm grateful for your heart. I'm grateful for, right? So it's like 10 different, I'm grateful for your smile. I'm grateful for your ecstatic dance curiosity. I'm grateful for, like I can just share 10 quick gratefuls for each person I see. And I can do that within 10 seconds. And the person that is talking across the line just feels amazing and just feels connected and feels my care, right? So it's just like that type of culture I want to rebuild in this country.
Well,
the culture
which that's the thing for people who don't know. I got invited to a Super Bowl party and whatever, and I didn't know where it is. In Brooklyn, let's go. And I'm, newly in New York, and I go, and it's basically a party of like 10 people on your bed, essentially.
my second floor.
But it was a couch that was made into this big
boudoir.
flat
I call
bed.
it boudoir.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh wow, this is nice. And young and old and everybody, every kind of person. And it was just, this is how I want to live, This is just, but come over anytime.
Please, and you too, come over anytime. And we have movie nights. We do Shabbat, Fridays. And
that's like in Africa, I had a person who went there and they got so confused because someone would say, I will, want to come over because we're going to do an interview for a show. I'm doing a podcast. Okay, I'll be there later. They thought later meant, so they're set up for the day that they're going to come over. The person comes like a week after that. I'm here. What? I'm here for the podcast. I said I'd be there later. So it's like.
Amazing.
It's
exactly.
Like
it's like
culture.
Time, right? It's like we have really sort of
Google
commodified.
calendared ourselves.
Yeah,
into
we have
death.
commodified time. One of my friends actually is working on a project focused on time, meaning how can we actually gain more time back as a company, how can we teach businesses to give time back to their employees so that there's more longevity, that there's more retention, so that there's more sense of I care about you and your time. I'm not just going to invade your time when you're home with your family. Right. So how can I really be more sort of consideration? Like that's actually a word.
That's medieval. I mean, that's what I wrote. I wrote a book called Present Shock that looked at that. And that started medieval. Once we changed our value system to pay people by the hour, we put the clock on the tower in the medieval village. We started paying people wages. We didn't do that before. People got paid for the stuff, for the value they created, not the time they spent.
That's so funny. I love that. Yeah, I mean, one of my friends, she is a dentist, a doctor of dentistry, and she is wanting to she's going through a career change in her life, and she's like, I just can't be playing in kids' mouths anymore. It's just too much for me. So she called me up. She was like, I put up an ad on social saying I wanted a chief adventure officer for Soleil, my daughter, and I wanted someone to play with her. And she wrote me back and she was like, pick me. And I said, but you're a fancy doctor of dentistry. Why would you want to be a chief adventure officer for my daughter? And she said, because I need a change of pace. So she moved in with me in New York from LA. She moved in for the last 6 months. She's been living with me. And hi, Katerina, I love you. And the trade was not financial. The trade was she moves in with me. She lives in my house. We pay room and board in exchange for her to spend a few hours a day while I'm at work, with Soleil. And so the trade has been so beautiful and
Trade's
juicy.
to be part of your family.
And she's now part of my family. She has like deeply become part of my family. And it's not it's not a currency exchange. It's an energy exchange.
Right.
And Lynn, my 80-year-old friend, Lynn Twist, talks about, two sides of hunger, the hunger for food and the hunger for meaning, right? Most of us today, we're not hungry for food, but we're hungry for meaning. So and that's really when I think of belonging too, it's like, how do we build a culture of curiosity so that we actually are not talking about ourselves the whole time? How can I be curious about you?
Right.
So you're not, so that we're not just talking about, people feel belonging when there's an exchange of, 50% you're talking about yourself, 50% you're talking about me. You're asking me questions. Like I'm asking you about your life and you're asking me about my life. And there's this like beautiful exchange of dialogue.
Exactly. And if you satisfy the hunger for meaning, and I know it's not that it's higher on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's not that. It's that if you satisfy especially the wealthy person's hunger for meaning, then they become less extractive, right? Then they become less abusive.
That's right.
Actually, you solve class struggle, if you will,
That's
by
right.
by rendering meaning to those who are substituting for it through the exploitation of others.
By the way, I rewrote Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. It's in my book. He wrote it in 1943, before a lot has been studied and discovered. So I think that Maslow can use an upgrade.
Well, he actually upgraded it when he was later in life. He was like, "That's not what I meant."
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because belonging, he put in the third rung of his hierarchy of needs. In fact, it's actually should be in the first baseline, foundational, as important as food, water, and shelter, our sense of belonging. Children die. We've discovered this now in the last 50 years since he came out with his hierarchy of needs, that if you don't have touch or connection or belonging, you will die as a child. So food, water, and shelter doesn't matter if you don't have touch and connection as a child. And so
as an adult, I'd argue too.
And actually, yes, and actually, in order to ascend to up the hierarchy of needs, we actually need belonging and connection, participation at every ascension, so for you to transition from each level, you actually need belonging, participation throughout.
For me, it's spooning. Really,
Yes.
The book. I was thinking to write a book. I don't think Norton will publish this one. I think to write a book called "Advanced Spooning for Beginners." Bestseller. I'll tell you what, my network, I feel like there's so many commonalities. It's amazing. I'm like, oh my God, me too. Then my wireless network name at my house in Brooklyn is Butt to Belly. Oh, perfect. See, that's spooning, baby.
Exactly.
Spooning. I'll go big spoon, little spoon any day of the week with
butt
you.
To belly. I always say butt to belly. Well, I think that the topic of spooning, belonging, connection, community, in with the advent of AI, it's the most important thing to talk about. It's what makes us human. You can't replace the reassurance and the warmth of a human hand, right, with an AI robot. You can't replace the gaze of an eye of someone who can see you and meet you, right, with a robot. And so there's so much to be proud of, to be on Team Human.
Yeah.
And so I'm just really grateful for this dialogue.
Yeah. So where do people can go to Daybreaker to find out about a Daybreaker?
Daybreaker.com. Yes. Belongcenter.org. And then you can find me at love.radha.
Love.radha. I hadn't found that. I was just on Daybreaker.
Love.radha on Instagram.
All right.
And I'm just, and then also we have an institute where we teach about community building as well, called the belonginstitute.com.
And that's good. That could be my referral place. When people are like, how do I do Team Human? It's like, I don't know how you do it. I just talk with people. But Belong Institute is how you join Team Human.
You got it.
Beautiful.
You got it. Yeah, beautiful.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks for what
adore
you
you.
do. I'm immensely and infinitely grateful at the beginning of this round of our friendship.
Yes. We're just at the start. We're in the entry ritual.
Beautiful.
Yes.
All right. So thank you, Radha Agrawal, and thank you again. It sounds like I'm pitching a sponsor. I guess I am. Everyone's Earth. They make stuff sort of like the stuff that you made. The women's stuff and the Tussie stuff and all that. They make like stuff out of cotton that's like really intimate, like baby diapers, so you don't have to throw out disposable things. totally biodegradable diapers. That's like what they're working on now, but that'll be out maybe by the time this podcast is out, so that we're not just creating mountains of plastic, of poop plastic, but biodegradable stuff, or just wash them even. Wouldn't that be a treat? And like women's stuff, like tampons and things that are not filled with plastic and crap, but just go away and all. They're a wonderful sponsor to have. They changed my life. Look at us. We're doing video with living color because of them. So yay. Thank you, Everyone's Earth. Team Human is produced by Joshua Chaplin. It's directed and edited by Brendan, Gabe, and James at MCM Creative in New York City. We're here all the time. Just there's other episodes you can go look at and listen to. Join, support us if you can. We got a sponsor, but we can still use support. It's all good. I'm Douglas Rushkoff, and you've been on Team Human, our last best hope for peeps.